Shavua Tov, where have you been? We've missed you. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief brought to you by Lay of the Land, and it's been a few days since we took off the end of Pesach or Passover, and boy have we missed you. But we're back today with a vengeance to bring you those top stories from Israel, and we do this every Monday to Thursday. And stay tuned for details of where to find us. But let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin with Lebanon. And Defense Minister Benny Gantz has issued a warning to Lebanon, saying that we will have stronger retaliation or further retaliation if any more rockets are fired from southern Lebanon into Israel. This follows news that a rocket was fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel in the early hours of the morning. The rocket landed in an empty field, but in response, the IDF struck targets in southern Lebanon. Now, it is believed that Palestinian factions in the south of Lebanon, showing solidarity with protesters at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, fired them and not Hezbollah. But Israel has made sure that the message is loud and clear that any offense or attack on our sovereignty will not be tolerated. Now, in the last couple of days, terror entities within the Gaza Strip have also fired rockets from the enclave into Israel. Now, on Friday morning, 3 rockets were fired. One actually fell short and injured a Palestinian civilian. And it's important to note that these rockets, which are invariably fired from within civilian infrastructure in the Strip, not only endanger Israeli civilians and Israeli infrastructure, but Palestinians as well. Now, with previous rocket attacks at the end of last week, the IDF struck targets. In fact, rockets that were fired towards the town of Sderot actually damaged some infrastructure. They landed very close to a kindergarten. But on Friday morning, the IDF did not strike targets. Instead, they imposed economic measures by closing off the Erez pedestrian crossing. The crossing still remains closed. Now, according to an unreported source, the military is preparing for a possible escalation, believed to last maybe a couple of days. However, it is generally believed that Hamas don't want to draw Israel into a combative situation on the Strip, but rather are choosing to focus their energies on protests on the Al-Aqsa and using the incitement of the liberation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque as a means to further incite violence inside Israel proper. Last night, Prime Minister Bennett spoke to President Biden, and we know some details about the phone call that took place, according to a government press office readout. We know that the Prime Minister wished the President a very happy Easter and also updated him on the situation on the Temple Mount and updated him about Israeli efforts to maintain security and the status quo, as well as to fight the incitement. The two leaders also spoke about Iran and predominantly the issue of the removal or the demand for removal of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps from the international terror list. Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is quoted as saying that President Biden is a true friend of Israel and understands our security needs and our concerns too well, and we are confident that he will not remove the IRGC from the terror list. The president also accepted Prime Minister Bennett's offer or invitation to visit Israel and announced he would be visiting in the coming months. Yesterday, Israel's Foreign Minister Yair Lapid addressed the Foreign Press Corps. He spoke about the situation on the Temple Mount and stressed that Israel is doing everything that we can to maintain the status quo. He also called on moderate Muslims and Muslim states to fight the fake news. Israel's mission to the United Nations has also shown proof of the incitement and the protests taking place inside the mosque, which are a desecration of a holy site. Now, this year we've seen something very, very special, the coinciding of Easter, Pesach, and Ramadan all at the same time. So Israel is working extra hard to ensure that members of all three faiths are able to visit their sacred sites in safety. However, for the last, I'd say, week and a half, protesters have gone inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, stockpiling rocks as weapons. They've even been filmed as setting off firecrackers, breaking some of the rebar, and also even playing a football while wearing shoes, which is an absolute violation of this holy space. So the foreign minister reiterated to foreign media the importance of making sure that their coverage is factual and not full of fake news, because all that it does is perpetuate the incitement. He also spoke about the rockets fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel and reiterated Israel will not tolerate any rockets or any breach of our sovereign security. But it's not all protests and rockets, it's also rock. And you know that every summer the party is right here in Israel, and after 2 years of not seeing everyone, we can't wait to throw open our stages and welcome the best of international acts. Now, a couple of months ago, we brought you news that rockers Maroon 5 will be playing 2 dates in Tel Aviv next month. They will also be followed by classic rock giants Deep Purple, who will be launching their world tour from Israel in May as well. And rapper and movie star 50 Cent, or is that 50 Cent? He'll be playing Israel as part of his world tour in July. But we aim to make you feel welcome, 50, because 50 Cent here in Israel, I think, is about $1.50. So your value will just increase by playing Israel. So those are our top stories making headlines today, but don't forget to check us out on our website. We're back with that original content, and you can find it all at www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook community is at Lottle's site. If you haven't joined us, where have you been? Come on, you know you want to click that like or follow button and share our content. We're on YouTube. Our channel is The Israel Brief, and do us a solid by clicking on that red subscribe button, because the more of you who click on it, the more we are able to get news from Israel out to as many people as possible. And of course, we're on Twitter, where all good twits are. And hey, who knows, it could belong to Elon Musk in a matter of days. And you can find us at Lay of the Land 5. That's at Lay of the Land 5. So with all of that, I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief. Thank you for watching, and we'll meet up with each other for those top stories making those headlines from Israel tomorrow.